is no longer breaking news that by a judicial fiat issued on January 14, 2020, the Supreme Court has said the elected governor of Imo State, Right Honorable Emeka Ihedioha, ordered issuance of a certificate of return forthwith to Hope Uzodinma and that he, Hope Uzodinma, be sworn in immediately. Uzodinma came fourth in the result declared by INEC, the electoral umpire. Perhaps more topical now is a serious allegation which a civil society organization has recently made that the certified true copy of the judgment released by the Supreme Court a full 8 days after the judgment differs in certain respect from what was delivered in court, a serious allegation which the National Judicial Council and all stakeholders in the justice delivery sector must look seriously into. That, however, is not the thrust of this piece. Some Nigerians, lawyers and non-lawyers, have raised some points from their analysis of the judgment and put the blame on INEC for not vigorously defending the allegations. However, the problem is that one cannot properly interrogate that judgment by merely looking at what the Supreme Court said in their judgments. I have had the privilege of studying and analyzing both the Tribunal and the Court of Appeal judgments. I have equally gone through the record of appeal, and I can tell you that I have serious doubts if the Supreme Court actually had time to take more than a cursory look at it. That is the best concession that one honestly can make to that great court. This is because if they did, the conclusion that they ignored what should have made the judgment go the other way would become inevitable. For those who know how the system works, there is also another redemptive but hidden exculpation for the justices. The tribunal judgment is 145 pages and the Court of Appeal judgments are made up of 68 pages of the majority and 63 of the dissenting minority judgments. The proceedings in the tribunal and in the Court of Appeal, the processes filed and the motions make up the almost 3,000 pages of the record bound in volumes. One poignant point highlighted is the new coinage, which the lead judgment introduced into Nigerian jurisprudential lexicon. It is original duplicate. The Evidence Act 2011 in section 86(1) defines primary evidence as the document itself produced for the inspection of the court. Section 86(2) and 3 goes further to include each part of document executed in several parts and every counterpart of a document executed in counterparts as constituting primary evidence and therefore admissive as original. It is a duplicate original, or is it a duplicate original? Is it a counterpart? The attitude of the court has been that duplicates are secondary evidence. Where there is a duplicate, an original exists. A duplicate is done by using carbon under the original. A duplicate supposedly captures each letter or word exactly the same way and pattern it is on the original. I think that second part of section 86 of 4 settles this matter. Section 86 of 4 of the Evidence Act 2011 states 86 of 4 where a number of documents have been made by one uniform process, as in the case of printing, lithography, photography, computer, or other electronic or mechanical process. Each shall be primary evidence of the contents of the rest. But where they are all copies of a common original, they shall not be primary evidence of the contents of the original. The danger of the according a duplicate the status of an original is that on a form like the INEC form EC8A, a false original may be placed on top to produce a forged duplicate and then touted as a duplicate of the original. This is the more reason it is necessary to have certification on the duplicate if you claim that the duplicate is that of an original of a public document. The form EC8As which Uzodinma tendered were said to have emanated from the police. If they were, the police being a public body ought to have certified it several months after the election. Such duplicate could not have just been brought to court by a police officer who was no longer serving in the state and who never brought before the court his authorization from the Inspector General or the Commissioner of Police to tender such. What happens when a duplicate is pleaded and in response it is said that no such document was made, meaning that the original does not exist? This is what happened with respect to the Form EC8As tendered by the petitioner. The petitioner touted them as duplicate result sheets. The respondent said that the result sheets were forged because no election took place on those 388 units, and in some of the units election was marred by violence and so no results were produced. The Electoral Act 2010, as amended, and the guidelines there to take cognizance of our electoral experience and the decades, over the decades, even from the first and second republics. Such experience includes violence, ballot box snatching, and voter intimidation, among others. Where such happens, preventing an election or causing the cancellation of party-held election, the Electoral Act and the guidelines there to direct the electoral officer on what to do. One of such is to fill an incident form, Form EC4 OGS. INEC, through their Director of Operations, tendered forms EC4 OGS incident forms as exhibits 63RD1, 63 to 63D19 to show this. On page 2663 of the Record of Appeal, he said, in Exhibit P19, some polling units have no results. Also in Exhibit P10, some results are written cancelled. We don't have original results for the 388 polling units because the original results were never returned to us as it did not exist. The tribunal was right in stating its judgment that no probative value can be rightly given to the result sheet without evidence from the petitioner on whom the onus lies to show the election took place in those units. Even after an exhibit is admitted, it is for the court to examine it together with the oral evidence accompanying it, if any. The court must make a decision on whether to accord it probative value. The Supreme Court missed the point when it insisted that INEC should have brought the original form EC8As to disprove the duplicates. Abba, which original? The one that does not exist? This was exactly the trap set by the petitioner, which INEC refused to walk into. They wanted to use any production of original by INEC to say that they conclusively proved that there was an election, something the petitioner could not bring one single unit agent to establish. In my respectful view, the Supreme Court seriously erred by their air-splitting arguments that by producing duplicate result sheets that the petitioner was not basing their case on the issue of election being held but on exclusion. As the tribunal asked rhetorically in its judgment, which was endorsed by the Court of Appeal, how can you prove exclusion of results without establishing that election actually took place? The parties had already put the conduct of election in those 388 units in issue when the petitioners pleaded that election held in all the units, while the respondents, especially INEC, pleaded that there were no results from those 388 units because election was marred by violence or did not hold at all. What is curious is that in Kano State, electoral appeal held on the same day by the same Supreme Court panel that decided Uzodinma versus Ihedioha, the Supreme Court held as inadmissive uncertified electoral results. The second and perhaps most important point of these judgments, let us assume that there was no defense at all in all these cases. The petitioner asked for declaratory release. It is a settled principle of law affirmed by the Supreme Court in a long line of cases through the decades that there were a plaintiff asked for declaratory reliefs if he fails or succeeds on the strength of his own case and not on the weakness or presumed weakness of the case of the defendants. Even where there is no evidence in rebuttal, the plaintiff must prove his case before declaratory relief can be given. The particular principle of law is most important election cases because of their peculiar or sui generis nature, and the Supreme Court has most particularly affirmed this principle in election cases, including in the recent Atiku versus Buhari. What the Supreme Court did in Uzodinma versus Ihedioha was to place the onus on the respondents to disprove the claim of the petitioners. In the Uzodinma judgment, the Supreme Court waxed non-sequitur. Must a court give probative value to the evidence of any witness is subpoenas, even that evidence does not rise to the threshold acceptable by our evidence laws? It is only those who do not know the system that could be taken by that holding of the courts. Subpoenas are appealed for by any party to the case and issued by the court. The witness comes under the authority of the court, but it still remains the witness of the party that applied for him to be subpoenaed. Even in a rare cases where a court on its own summons a witness, such witness would still be subject to cross-examination by parties, and his evidence will still be subjected to the evidential test. The trial court will still analyze the documents tendered by a witness on subpoena. It is therefore almost shocking that the Supreme Court gave the impression that admission and giving of probative value to documents tendered by a witness on subpoena is automatic. One statement from analysts that went off, saying, now if you exclude result sheets from 388 units, you automatically exclude the voters accredited there. That's also logical. This is rather sophisticated, unless sophistry is accepted as logic. Let us interrogate the procedure. Accreditation of voters is done before voting. The figure of accredited voters does not change. Notwithstanding what happens to the result, it is the number permitted to vote. If votes are excluded and later added, it can never surpass the number accredited to vote. If it so happens by a small number, it is an error, but may be overlooked as within a margin of error. If it surpasses by more than 100,000 votes, then there must be a scam somewhere. This is not something a court should overlook or paper over. The total vote cast can be fewer than the accredited voters because some people, after being accredited, may not come back to vote, but not more. One other point is that there is nothing like accredited votes, as the judgment tried to imply. There are some other things wrong with this judgment which has been raised in different media. For example, the improbability of Uzodinma scoring more than 95% of the votes in the 388 unit result actually resented by him, while scoring less than 10% on the other unit that constitutes about 90% of the electoral units in the state. There is the temptation to put the Imo gubernatorial election judgment, the most controversial judgment in the history of the Supreme Court, among those things that would go away with time. It is now very difficult to tell Nigerians that there is any reason to do the ritual of voting in any election. We are very near the tipping point. This issue is not an Imo State issue, and it cannot be solved by the court thinking more about its prestige than about justice and the wish of the people. Lord Denning, arguably the greatest lord that has walked this earth, once said, if we never do anything which has not been done before, we shall never get anywhere. The law will stand and see while the rest of the world goes on, and that will be bad for both. The very learned justice of the Supreme Court could take a cue and use this opportunity to begin the needed journey of self-redemption for the judiciary. So guys, try pardon us the way we are, going back and forth with this thing, because it's really really a long one. So just try to get the idea of the whole thing, what the whole thing is really talking about. We did a video yesterday when it said that Uzodinma is really panicking because it seems that in the review of this review of this election, or this verdict given by the Supreme Court, hope here might have chance of coming back, and there's this panic, and we see here that Oshomole took Uzodinma to Buhari so that he will help him at the Supreme Court in this review of a thing. So please try and understand the whole scenario, what this whole story is always just trying to talk about, because it's a long one. Some people now come for you that, why are you saying like this? Why are you reading like that? Please just bear it. So, but what we know in a nutshell is that something is not just right, and that's why a lot of analysts are really coming out to say, to check their to check some things, that some things are not just right. And just like the writer has said, that if you think that, oh, something has not been done before, so it cannot be changed, and just like some people are like, oh, after the Supreme Court has made its declaration, nobody should go back. I say, if Emeka is going for review, that means it is legal. So you can't say because somebody has not done it before, so it should not even be looked into, because some people just believe that it's just wasting his time. If other people in the past never deemed it fit to go for review after the Supreme Court has made their own judgments, that is their own this thing, their own wish. But if there's need for review, why not? He wants to test that, let him do that. And a lot of people have said a lot of things concerning the judgment of the Supreme Court. It's not as if it cannot be changed. So there's nothing like, oh, it has not been done before. No, why would they do this? Would they not do that? So that is the whole essence of this story. So there is fire on the mountain, unless they're still going to tidy up their drama or their games, unless that. So before we forget, this article is written by Emeka Okpara. Emeka Okpara. So he's the one that wrote this article, try to explain all of this. I believe maybe he's a lawyer or something, but that is just what is before everybody. It is not all about Imo. According to what he said, it is all about doing the right thing, and people to take you from there and do the right thing. For the fact that the Supreme Court has given a judgment doesn't mean that it cannot be looked into, and that is what Emeka here is doing, to let there be review. And if care is not taken, only God knows what will happen. So guys, let's hear your own take concerning this. Leave your comments below and let's learn from you. Thank you.